Self-help, relationship help, business help, and sometimes just no damn help at all. But we're always here to have fun. They call me the game changer and the real deal, but I'm not a cliche. Just call me Casey. It's my favorite day. It's ABBA. Honey, I'm still free. Take a chance on me. Do you know that one, Stacey?
I do, but I'm not singing it, baby. You go ahead.
So how many times did we watch Mamma Mia this summer?
A few.
1 and 2. The question of the day is, as the saying goes, do you bet on yourself or against yourself? So as you look back in your history of running your business or actually just running your life, did you always walk into circumstances where you were like, I got this, I'm going to do this? Or were you always questioning yourself? And what changed that changed you from being questioning it yourself to being betting on yourself?
See, I'm a bad person to ask because I unfortunately have the philosophy, good or bad,
right?
That I can do anything.
Right. Anything you can do, I can do better.
Yeah, pretty much. So I think the challenge is I say yes.
Right.
And then I figure it out because I think, well, I can do that.
Absolutely.
It can't be that hard. So, yeah. So it's hard for me to think back to a day that now, granted, back in school, I didn't have the confidence and all of that stuff. But when I started my business, I'm like, yeah, I can do that.
But what changed? How did you get there? How did you one day... I think everyone in high school pretty much questions, if they can do something, or public school, whatever, you can do something. But what changed that? Do you even know? Do you remember what changed?
Well, I know I think it was more of a university experience. I got involved with leading Frosh Week, and I kind of came into my own. So, when you're up on stage in front of thousands of freshmen, or Frosh, we called them, and I realized that, you know what, I am a person who can give experience. I am a person who can do this. So I kind of forced myself to prove it to myself.
Right.
And then it was successful. So when you're on stage in front of thousands of people and you're dancing to songs and you're getting them going, you realize that you kind of have something here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah. It's I think a lot of listeners are, still in the same boat in terms of, they still question themselves and they're like, I don't think I can do it. I don't think I have the, capability. I don't have the money. I don't have the knowledge. And I think a lot of that comes from, I think, the way most people were raised, years ago. And we were, we didn't question at school. We didn't, we did what we were told. Which is true. And you thought if you didn't act a certain way or do a certain thing, then, you were out of line. Let's put it that way.
You might be thrown in jail.
You might be thrown in jail is correct. So, and I think, I look back at going to school and I was very, very quiet, extremely shy. Never talked, shockingly. Never spoke.
Sorry, what was that?
I know. And now I teach speaking for a living and I'm on stages all over the world. But the truth is I was very painfully shy. I tell this story when I'm teaching speaking, but essentially, one day in public school, my parents were called into the school office and they were worried that I was being abused because I never spoke. And so my parents were like, we don't understand, she's just quiet. And they were like, no, it's not normal for somebody never to speak, never to volunteer. And they asked if they had any other kids that were the same. And my parents said, well, yeah, we have her brother, Tom. And they looked at my parents, and they're like, Tom is her brother? Well, geez, he was a polar opposite. And no wonder she never speaks because she never has a chance to speak if that's her brother.
Funny.
So, I grew up thinking that I don't know why, I just didn't really speak. I didn't have a ton of confidence, but I didn't have a lack of confidence either. I just don't really remember, feeling like I could do things. I think I felt because my parents worked 7 days a week, I was forced to just do things. I was forced to do things. I was forced to learn things. English wasn't their first language, so there was no one to ask for homework help. There was no one to, take me places I needed to be taken because they were working. So when you're in that position, you figure things out, right? So you have no choice but to bet on yourself. So I like to kind of tell people, if you didn't have a choice, can you figure it out?
I think when you don't have a choice, you're forced to figure it out.
Right.
Because that opportunity or the decision is sort of taken away from you.
Yeah. And so you're forced to think to yourself, I have to bet on myself. I have no choice. But if you give yourself an out, that's the problem, right? If you give yourself an out, then of course you don't have to bet on yourself because you can just say, oh, I don't have the experience. Oh, I don't have the knowledge, right? A good example for me is I remember, when you had to do speeches at school and everyone would be like, you'd go home and your parents would be like, oh my God, I hate doing speeches, right? Oh, I feel so bad for you because it's so nerve-wracking, et cetera, et cetera. But when my kids, I never wanted to give them that. So when my kids came back from school and said, I have to do a speech, my first thing out of my mouth was, oh my God, you're so lucky. That's so awesome. What are we going to talk about? Because I wanted them to understand that, they could do anything. And the experience was fun and uplifting and it could be really cool. So I think that's the difference. We have to teach our kids to always bet on themselves, right? And I think a lot of the millennials have learned that, right? They've learned that their parents have maybe excessively, as we talked about in one of our other shows, maybe excessively in terms of, no, we don't, Stacey and I both don't like participation ribbons. No. So, betting on yourself is a little different than just participating.
Yes. I think, I know when I grew up, my dad didn't say, the gender roles were, he taught me about cars. He taught me how to use tools. He's like, there's no reason why you can't just do anything that you want. So thankfully that was also ingrained in me right from the beginning, which is really cool. But I also think in the kids today, they don't have the same worry about what people think because their willingness to put themselves out there publicly on social media through all the apps that they have, it's a different philosophy.
Totally.
They're like, hey, can I get on camera and will you record this and will you record that? In the meantime, when I was that age, I would have begged for the world to swallow me up before I would ever speak in front of a class. Yeah,
and I think back in the day, I think also, if anyone had a learning disability or something else, they were labeled, right? And it was like a bad thing to have. And now like half the people in high school have IDP programs, right, that they're on, and they know what their disability is, and everybody gets it. Like they all know, and it's not a big deal. It's just like, oh, I learned differently. This is how I learn. And so they're okay with it, and therefore it doesn't hold them back. But back in the old days,
in the 1800s,
if you were told you had a learning disability, you were labeled and told, well, you can't really do a lot, like certain things in life, right?
Well, they were also segregated from the rest of the school population, and they were given opportunities that were much lower in the expectation world, right? So, of course, they were going to go through life going, well, I can't.
Yeah. Fascinating.
Whereas, no, actually you can, and you can probably do it better than some.
Exactly. So, I think that whole, excuse of, well, I don't have the experience, I don't have the knowledge, etc., is long gone as well. And you don't even have to have money anymore, because the truth is you can learn everything you need to on YouTube. So, and I get asked the question all the time, even in my home. People are always coming to me and saying, well, how do you know that? And I always answer the same way. I don't know. If I find a problem, and I think you're the same, Stacey, if I find something I don't know how to do, I just look it up, right? So, if I need to fix the toilet, I look it up on YouTube, and guess what? There's some guy on the other side telling me how to fix the damn toilet. Right?
But I think that's also because you have the confidence to know that you can follow the instructions. You have the basic knowledge of tools and screws and all of that kind of stuff and terminology that you can actually do it. But you also have the attitude that you can do it.
Right.
Versus somebody who would like to watch the YouTube video on how to fix their toilet. They don't have the confidence that they're going to be able to execute.
Right.
So sometimes, because I have the same unfortunate, sometimes bad thing where it's, I can do that. I can do plumbing. And then I can watch the video and then I have to call the plumber.
That's the song. That's the song we talked about. Here I am to save the day.
And I think I can. And then my husband laughs at me because now we have to call a plumber.
Exactly.
But you know what? 90% of the time I can fix it.
Yeah.
So I'm okay on the 10% that I make a mistake.
I think it's for people to understand is the old saying of what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, the worst things that can happen is you got to phone the plumber, but you're going to do that in the first place. So you might as well see if you can do it. I remember I had to, the dishwasher broke and I was, and I'd already had somebody fix it twice. And I was like, I am not spending all that money because the other time he was like, oh, there's a piece of broken glass in the thing and it cost me $200 to take it out. So I literally took apart the entire dishwasher, got what I needed to do fixed and put it back together, and I saved myself like $250. Now, I've talked about spending your time wisely and making sure that it's worth the effort, right? And so for me, the hour I was okay with because I wanted to accomplish it. I wanted to be able to say, yeah, I can do this. I am going to do this. So, that makes a difference to people's lives. But I think the key for me is, again, always saying that what's the worst thing that can happen?
Well, and I think it also goes back to one of the biggest lessons, and I just told my son this the other day, the biggest lesson that I ever received from my dad was always ask, because the worst thing they're going to do is say no.
Right.
And you're no further ahead.
Exactly.
Because if you don't ask, it's a definite no. But if you ask, there's still an opportunity that somebody might say yes.
Yeah.
And I've used that, and sometimes, a lot of times, especially when I was young, it was a no. I'm like, well, I knew it was a no before I even asked, but then I get a yes, and I'm like, really?
Yeah.
If I hadn't have asked, it wouldn't have done that. So it's an
Exactly.
interesting philosophy, I guess, around taking that chance.
Yeah.
And just ask.
I prefer for people to try and fail, right? Because most people that are successful, most of the people that you read about in the world that have all the money, have generally failed at what they've tried to do more times than they've succeeded. So you fail, and then eventually it works. And it's no different than whether you're fixing the toilet or launching a business. I mean, personally, have I launched things that have failed? Oh, yeah. How about you?
Yes.
Yes.
Many.
And so the beauty of that is you thought you could do it and you launched it and it didn't work. But what you did is gain this tremendous knowledge of what you did wrong or what you were lacking. And then you went back, you got the knowledge, and then you rejigged things and you launched successfully.
Well, isn't it that you learn more from mistakes than you do from success?
Absolutely. Like if you were one of those fortunate people that, launched something and it was successful, I generally call that luck more than hard work. Now, some of you have put the time and effort in and worked at it and boom, it was successful. But I really don't know of one person that I've ever talked to in my life that hasn't failed at something.
I think if they say that they haven't failed at something, I'm going to call them a liar.
Exactly. So I think it's key that, you need to understand that you have to bet on yourself. That's it. You just have to bet on yourself because nobody else is. There's no one coming around to prop you up and say, oh, yeah. And if you need somebody to say, you can do this, I think it's a disservice to yourself.
Absolutely.
Even like if you go, I get it, people who go to personal trainers, it's fantastic because you're saying, I can't do this myself, but I need some help. That's fine. Help is good. But at the end of the day, you still have to drive yourself there to go to the personal trainer, which means, in fact, you are betting on yourself. So people that say, you're just not good enough to work out on your own. Sure I am. But this forces me to actually go do it, right?
Well, and going back to, I think you said this in one of the other episodes as well, is if one thing doesn't work, you have to try something different.
Right.
And it took me a really long time to realize that I wasn't a gym person because I thought it was a me thing.
Yeah.
I thought I was doing something wrong. All these people are going to the gym and they're working out. Why is this not working for me? It's not complicated. You show up, you work out, you leave. And after trying about 15 million gyms, I realized, and I had to accept that about myself. And I went, you know what? I'm not a gym person.
No.
But there's lots of other opportunities out there for me to work out and become part of a fitness community and places and all that kind of stuff that weren't a typical gym.
Right.
So then I had to go, you know what? It's not that I'm not worthy or that I'm not putting in the effort. That's just not a good thing fit for me.
Exactly.
So then I found something else and it is working. So I'm like, okay, so it's not that I'm willing to give up on myself. It's not that I'm not worthy or whatever the case may be. I'm not focused on it. I just had to realize that that particular solution wasn't for me.
Right.
And I think we try to force that whole concept of a square peg in a round hole.
Yep.
We try to force it, and when it doesn't work, I've failed.
Exactly.
Actually, no.
And then that sometimes people prevent themselves from moving forward again because you failed once. You're like, I'm just not cut out for this. And for those of you who are in the online world and online marketing, which is one of the things I specialize in. A lot of people launch things and they realize that it failed, so they think, I'm just not good at this. And then they drop everything that they've worked on for an entire year. And for most entrepreneurs, you have to understand that you're climbing up that cliff slowly, and you get to the top, and everyone usually quits just before they get to the top and go down the other side, which is the easy side. They quit at the very worst time because they've lost their confidence. And I think the key is really understanding that you can do something. You just have to stick with it and tweak it as you go along. But eventually you'll find your place. So, if you don't know how to do something, look it up. It's amazing, right? Google is truly my favorite place in the world because you can find everything there. I learned absolutely everything that I generally do today online. And, boys and girls, I went to school, I have my MBA, but I can tell you that it is nothing in comparison to what I learned online just from searching for what I needed to understand and learn on my own. So I now don't get all mad at me, you people who are in school, okay? Because I did go, but I'm just saying that for a lot of people, the concept of, going to higher education maybe isn't right for you. Because the truth is there's a lot of professions that you don't need a degree in unless you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or something that you need specific training. You might not need to go to school for 4 years. You might be able to learn it online or go to school online because things are changing whether people want to accept it or not. And I believe that the whole concept of betting on yourself is so much easier these days because you don't have to go to a classroom where you're fearful of, oh, am I going to look stupid, right? You don't have to hire a coach that's too expensive. You don't have to do any of that because you can literally sit in your home on your computer. And if you don't have a computer, go to the library and use one for free. But be able to learn what it is that you need to move forward. So I think that that's what you need to do. You need to bet on yourself because you have the ability, and the only one holding you back is you and your old concepts from days gone by. So what are we going to leave with today? You got some homework as usual. So number one is, are you betting on yourself or not? And if you're not so sure, what I want you to do is pick something you've always wanted to do or learn. Maybe it's speaking in public. Maybe it's writing a blog. Maybe it's going to the gym. Whatever it is, I want you to do something that you don't think you know how to do, and then go learn it very simply and do it. Implement it this week. And once you implement it, you'll have an incredible amount of confidence to take the next step, to do the next thing on your bucket list. Thanks for tuning in today. Go to callmekz.com and let me know what you want me to talk about or rant about or anything that's on your mind, and I will be sure to get to it. So don't forget to subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.